So my name is Jeffrey Hull, and I am recently joining the organization as the Director of Education and Business Development.
And how do you fit into the coaching world?
Let's see, there's obviously never any short answer to that question, but
okay.
I trace my roots in coaching to 1995, where the intersection of two things. I was a director of human resources at a company called Booz Allen and Hamilton, which is one of the major management consulting firms. I was involved with HR, the whole range of leadership development, recruitment, selection, staff development for the information technology division of that organization. And at that time realized that I personally found the most value and the most benefit out of the counseling work that I was doing, as opposed to some of the process work that I was doing.
What's your educational background behind that?
My educational background was a BA in philosophy and music originally.
Wow.
And then an MBA in organizational psychology. So it was a business-focused and psychology-focused business degree. But the two things that intersected were my deciding my sort of an entrepreneurial desire to kind of get out of the corporate structure in the mid-90s and start up something with some friends to do training and leadership development. And at that point, coaching was really just sort of something we were thinking about, but it was yet to be a profession. And that happened at the same time that I met a gentleman named Thomas Leonard, who was one of the founders of the first coaching institutes called Coach University. Mm-hmm. And I did his initial training work, which has morphed into CTI and ICF and all of the coach training institutes that we're all familiar with today. But it was my introduction to his training in coaching and my starting my own company with partners around leadership development and then beginning to add coaching that coalesced into at that time, becoming a coach. So it goes way back to sort of almost when coaching itself was just emergent.
Yeah. What kinds of assignments do you like the best?
That's a difficult question. I mean, I would say my range of coaching assignments has evolved over the years. Early on, in the late 90s, when we would do leadership training for high potentials within, I was very well versed in information technology, so I would do a lot of software companies and that kind of thing. It was sort of the young pop managers who were, very, very expert at their particular function, but not particularly ready to lead other people. So that was my early entrance into training and coaching. And then later in my career, I did go back to school and get a PhD in clinical psychology, and that was basically to add some of the theoretical underpinnings to the work I was doing, but to become a little more well-versed in some of the theory and deeper issues that I was grappling with as I moved higher in the organization. So if you jump to more recently, working with senior teams, and often the CEO and his executive team, or her executive team. And I think my primary focus is now currently on optimization of the leadership group that's running a nonprofit or a corporate or at a hospital, the division of anesthesia and surgery. There's a chief of anesthesia and they have their physician group. So it's working with the senior leadership team and optimizing that intersection between individual performance as a senior executive and then the team performance. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I focus now.
And how does all of that fit together? I mean, what's drawing you to this position with the Institute of Coaching?
That's such a great question because having been involved with coaching almost since,
since coaching
coaching has been around since the 80s or 70s, but as a profession, I think it's safe to say that coaching is still an emergent profession. And we now have the International Coaching Federation, and we have CTI, and we have IPEC, and we have other places. NYU Columbia, psychological associations here in Boston that certify coaches. So sort of becoming accredited as a coach is now something that's been becoming sort of understood and available. But a next level for professionalization in the field is a community of best practices, forwarding the scientific research of what does coaching actually mean, how does it work effectively, what are the things, the models, the theories, the approaches that we're all sort of stumbling with that are really working with our clients. That's the job of this institute. You know, so when I met Carol and a few years ago came to my first conference, I really felt like I had come home. Like, wow, you know, I belong to the American Psychological Association as a psychologist, and that's sort of the norm. If you're a clinical psychologist, you join APA and you get involved if you want to keep up with what's going on in the field of psychology, psychotherapy, and all of that. And that's what this organization, I hope, will become for coaches. And I think it's right on the verge of being in that place of, okay, now I'm a certified coach. Now I have a couple of years of experience working with a health and wellness practice or a leadership practice, but I want to know what's next. What are the advances? What's the latest research? What should I be growing in myself to be effective with my clients? And where do you look for that? Well, you look to your professional association for that. So when Carol and I had a dialogue around what she was trying to do with creating a sustainable organization, a funded team to do education, to do research, to do community building, I mean,
yeah, it's a nice fit. Huh?
I fell in love. Like, you know, it's we've been listening to positivity and change and motivation, and so for me, it's intrinsically motivating. It's a true win-win because I've been coaching for over 20 years, so I feel like I have an opportunity to give back. I'm not the only expert in the room. I'm still learning from a lot of people in this kind of organization all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like I have something to offer. And I feel like the organization really can use the benefit of folks like myself and many others to kind of come together and help Carol and help the founders to take the organization to the next level.
What are you looking at as initial goals? What are the first kinds of projects that you're looking at?
I would say they come in 3 flavors, and I would caveat all of this by saying yet, like, ... yet to be determined. It's not a cake that's baked, it's a recipe that's still being beaten. And I'm very much in dialogue with Carol and Margaret and Susan David and other folks. But 3 areas that I think are bubbling to the surface. Number 1, we want to really make the research component of the Institute sustainable. So there is a grant that came from the Harnish Foundation. So there's a foundational base, but we need to connect coaches with organizations, the companies and the nonprofits and the places where coaching is happening with the researchers. Okay. And so one of our goals will be to elevate that combination. Okay, so bringing
kind of a facilitation.
Yeah, it's like
bringing together.
A lot of coaches would love to be involved in research, but they're not trained as researchers. And a lot of researchers in academia, in industrial psychology, organizational psychology, now we're calling coaching psychology, they're doing PhDs, but they don't have access to Google. They don't have access to Citibank. So we can work together and create win-win situations, and the Institute can facilitate that. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think to be that next level of education for those folks that are certified, either have PhDs or they have CTI certifications, their professional coach certifications, master coach certifications, 5 years of practice, 10 years of practice, but they want to stay at the edge. What's next? We're not going to certify coaches, I don't think, because there's a lot of places that do that, but I think we can offer a curriculum, like an advanced practicum. Okay. And so my job will be to look to how to create the master classes, the teleclasses, the venues for that. And then number 3, community. I think those of us that are successful in executive coaching or wellness coaching or whatever we're calling our particular practice, we may form together in small groups. There's a number of networked partnerships that I've been a part of and I'm aware of. There's also a few large companies like the Center for Creative Leadership or Right Management. But beyond that, a lot of coaches are kind of out there.
Very much so.
Yeah. And hanging up their shingle and learning from doing. So we just, this past week, had our first Institute of Coaching Leadership Forum, which was really small, 25 senior coaches coming together, dialogue, learning from each other. We did it here in Boston for obvious reasons, but I want to see how we can, the sense of community was really wonderful. It was palpable. I think there's a yearning for that, and that's another role that I think this organization can take to hopefully the next stage.
Good. How do you think that our members can support what you're trying to do and where you want to go in your new role?
On multiple levels. So the immediate response I would have to that question is that the founding fellows, which are really folks that are typically senior people in the field of coaching, and have devoted a certain amount of time in their lives to developing a coaching practice or having an expertise in a particular area, and it ranges from. I know you're a legal person, and I learned that you're an Enneagram expert, and I'm a big Enneagram fan. So another conversation. But those of us that have developed an expertise are looking to give back. So to be a resource when we have these community gatherings or when we do a curriculum of master classes, we have founding fellows and founding members that it can be teachers. So that's number one. And then I think our affiliate members, they can support each other in ways that we have yet even discovered. You know, whether it's in support pods that are like regional groups.
Well, there's the community right there.
Yeah, exactly. So sponsoring speakers to come to different locations. I mean, there's a lot of different types of things. If we were to do some kind of talk show or radio show or something, we would use affiliate members to learn about specific cases. I think one of the things that our affiliate membership, people that are, just getting engaged with the field or building their practice, and is that they stumble as I have and continue to do to a certain extent with difficult cases or situations that don't work. How do you deal with that uncoachable client? Or when do you turn and say, that's really not a good engagement for me? Yeah. Those difficult questions, and that's where we can support each other.
It really requires peer support, and it's more than supervision. It's the
right.
It's the I'm thinking about the presentation yesterday from Rosin Van Zander and possibility,
right.
and what happens when you mix all the pieces together and you've got diversity and you've got everything else in the mix.
Yeah, and you mentioned diversity, and I think that if you were asking me some of the key challenges that I'm seeing in the clients I'm working with, it's senior executives looking around their room at their team and seeing that they may be the only American in the room. Literally, I've seen that 2 or 3 times now with a global team, and. I had
challenges.
And to draw all those voices and all those creative thinking out, and people have a whole host of sensitivities around, what's acceptable and how do you be a leader. So that's one, and then women in leadership. It's top of the news these days, but I think it's really important that we as coaches, whether we're working with men who are trying to understand the new leaders that they are hopefully welcoming into or the women that are trying to discover new ways to lead that don't necessarily emulate the patterns of the patriarchal past. So those are some of the challenges. Well, I think the thing that I remember when I first came to the conference a couple of years ago was this sense of belonging that I've taken the time to become a coach, get credentialed in whatever way. You know, in my case, it was getting a PhD in psychology. In many cases, it may be a certification of some sort at this point. I don't think everyone has to get a PhD to become a coach. But after that, and you start practicing, and you develop some peers and some partners. But beyond that, where do you belong as a profession? It was when I came to this conference that I started to say, this is where I belong, and I want to be a member, and I want to give, and I want to receive. And that's where I think we want people to be encouraged to feel like they not only want to support the organization by becoming a member, but to have a voice about what we grow into. You know, the exciting thing that Carol said to me, and I would say to anyone looking to join this organization, is it's still young. It's still forming. So if it's not serving you as a member in the way you would like, it's not too late.